I made a spreadsheet showing that my ex asked me to babysit for 87 nights while I only asked for 12, then he had the audacity to say I dumped my kids on them when I requested 1 week for my honeymoon. Posted by you/life_of_the_party XO. This is kind of sweaty, but my ex-husband Greg, 38M, and I, 30F, have 2 kids, Louisa, 9F, and Ted, 7M. We divorced over 5 years ago and co-parent very well. The divorce was because I was happy with our 2 children, but he wanted more, and even therapy didn't help. We have had basically no issues, there's no child support, we're 50-50, have never had issues having the kids if the other parent has something come up, and understand that it's just about making sure their lives aren't too disrupted. Greg remarried Tessie, 38F, 4 years ago, and they have another child, a boy, and another about to make their appearance in this world in a few weeks. I am marrying my fiancé Luke, 36M, in February. We've been together for about 3 years, and he's known my kids for 2. We moved in together last year. We have a group chat, but aren't overly friendly or anything. We only talk about the kids and keep it pretty lighthearted. Our only rules with the other datings is that we would introduce our partners to the other before they met the kids, which went great with both of them. When Tessie and Greg married, I obviously kept the kids an extra week for their honeymoon, and again for my actual week so they could settle in. They didn't live together before they got married. When they had their first baby, I kept our kiddos for about a month, but brought them over a few times to see their new brother obviously, so they could settle in since it was Tessie's first baby. A few weeks ago at one of Lacey's games, Tessie told me the date her C-section was scheduled for, which is in the middle of their custody week. I told her we were excited for them and of course I could keep them that week and my following week, and we could go back to normal their next custody period. She kind of hemmed and hawed and asked if we could keep them for another custody week to give them a month again to get used to things. I said that was fine. I didn't expect them to need that much time for their second baby, but C-sections are major surgeries, and I said I'd be happy to keep the kid. They don't live far from us, so bringing them over to hang out won't be too out of my way, and of course I love having my kids with me. Anywho, we finalized our plan for our honeymoon, which is 3 weeks. I know it seems excessive, but it's something on both of our bucket lists, but not something the kids would be too interested in, and the honeymoon seems like the best opportunity to do it. Basically what would happen would be that we get married on Saturday, my week, the kids would stay with Greg that night and stay for his week, then they would keep them for our week and their next week. So they'd have them for one of my custody weeks plus 1 extra evening. I don't have family around, my parents passed young, grandparents before them, and the aunt and uncle who helped raise me retired to New Mexico, 3-hour plane ride plus 2-hour drive at Min. I have friends who have watched the kids before, but I didn't see a single issue with asking Greg to keep them for a week since it seems like there's a bit of precedent. I texted him the general plan and emailed him a more detailed one with locations, days, times etc. so he could know where we were, how to contact us if there was an issue. I thought all was well and good, but they never responded until a few days later they emailed me what Luke and I jokingly now refer to as the manifesto. It was long, rambling, repetitive, and still somehow partially written by ChatGPT. The gist of it was: what kind of mother goes on a 3-week vacation without her kids? I'm a terrible person in general for asking a young mother to have her stepkids full-time for 3 weeks while I go and enjoy myself. She kept calling Tessie a young mother. I think she means mother of young kids, and I know it's not the point, but it kept annoying me. Also, it wouldn't be alone with her, Greg would obviously be there. I'm a horrible co-parent for asking them to have the kids for 3 straight weeks while their kids are so young. Their newest baby will be 6 months old by then BTW. Apparently it's all well and fine that Luke and I don't want any more kids. He has had a vasectomy and known he didn't want kids of his own for a while, but we'd better not think that gives us permission to dump Louisa and Ted on them to gallivant around. I don't think I've ever gallivanted in my entire life. We needed to figure our own weeks out ourselves. This was not life or passing and it was ridiculous to ask them. I got petty after this, especially them acting as if we are constantly dumping the kiddos on them, so I went through the last 4 years of texts and made a spreadsheet of how many times either of us has asked the other to keep the kids and the duration on an Excel sheet. While we both have made these requests, they have done so for 87 nights, 52 times, versus me 12 nights, 8 times. Obviously, this makes sense since they have a baby, and I didn't send it to them or anything, but it was good to know I'm not crazy. My friends say I should tell them that, fine, I won't keep them during their custody time after their new baby comes. I'm not going to do that. I love my kids and want to see them as much as I can. But I do a lot extra for them. Just some examples. Sometimes Luke, if he's off work, pick the kids up every single day after school, and on Greg's custody weeks I drop them off at their house since he doesn't get off until 5 so that Tessie doesn't have to take the baby out to pick them up. Keep in mind that she does not work anymore. Our divorce decree says that whoever's week it is must drop the kids off at the other parent's house, but but I've been doing all of the back and forth for a while again because they have a kid and because it's not that far, 5-minute drive, 20-minute walk if it's nice. I take the kids to all of their appointments, do all of the school parent stuff during the day, etc. Since I have a super flexible schedule and Greg's isn't, he would need to use PTO for all of this stuff. We usually split health insurance per the divorce decree. They're on his works insurance, but since I take them to all of their appointments etc., I pay all of the co-pays. I keep a tally just in case I would end up owing him money, and I know what he pays towards the premiums, and in the past it was minimal, but our daughter unfortunately has type 1 diabetes, which has gotten pretty expensive. It wasn't hurting me, but Greg mentioned how tight money was once when I was bringing it up, and I decided that it's not affecting my life. Our daughter needed it, so I've been letting it go. Their son has been in the process of being diagnosed with autism, and has pretty bad meltdowns. This is all I know from Greg, so they call me pretty frequently to see if I can come and get the kids for a few hours if things are overwhelming. Of course I love my kids and spending time with them, but I've had to cancel plans for this and they have not cared. Greg was in an accident and has been using my old car. I got a new one and hadn't sold the old one yet. It's not worth a ton or anything, for the past 7 months, with no effort to replace it. Greg travels sometimes for work, and they, Greg and the kids, have a cat over there. Normally Louisa would take care of the litter box if Greg was traveling, but since her diagnoses and until we get her labs, health under some form of control, we both agreed that we don't want her messing with it. They let the cat go outside during the day. Since Tessie has been pregnant she said she shouldn't have to, and Ted is a little young. He tried, failed, now he helps Lowell, so I've been doing it. Anyways, these are all benefits for them that I'm going to inform them are ending. I won't go back on my word to have the kiddos after she has her C-section, but the absolute gall of them to not do the one thing that I have asked of them, and that I've done for them, have brought me to this. Most of my friends say I'm not going far enough, but if you have said that it might cause a breakdown in our co-parenting relationship, which would affect the kids. That's really the only thing I care about, so now I'm hesitant. Relevant comments. Commenter 1, I mean, even if it does cause a breakdown, A, they started it, and B, you've been doing a lot of extra. I would reconsider stopping doing the kitty litter because it is true that pregnant women shouldn't handle litter. Recently was pregnant myself. But yeah, NTA. You do them a lot of favors that you don't have to. It's a jerk move on their part that they won't take the kids for 1 extra week. Ops response, yeah, they'll have to pay someone because I am uncomfortable with Louisa doing it until we really get the beatus under control and her doctor agrees. Commenter 2, Duh. Your friends are worried if you send them this info it will be a breakdown of the co-parenting relationship, but don't consider their entitled manifesto to be the first crack at it? Those friends are full of it. I would send them the Excel spreadsheet and tell them to verify it. Remind them of the flexibility you've given them and you raised small children without the benefit of a third parent. I would tell them how insulting their manifesto and lack of recognition of your efforts to make their lives easier and blend well with all the kids in mind. The audacity it takes to shame you for taking 3 weeks for your honeymoon, when you take the kids to so many things. Forget them. If they don't wise up, don't take the kids and stick to the custody schedule and work something out with your friends for your weeks. Ops response, yes, the manifesto was incredibly hurtful and came out of nowhere. We had always gotten along so well. I know money is tough on them, but Luke said the same as you, they chose to have more kids, she chose to be a som, but it still feels like maybe they're jealous of the long trip. Luke's parents have offered to watch them, they aren't huge into kids but like ours, and want to help us out, but I feel like it's not their job when their father will be in town. The other option would be to fly my aunt and uncle up for the week, which I know they'd like, but again, it seems ridiculous when their own father will be in town. I couldn't imagine being in town just hanging out knowing that my kids were at his parents'. Commenter 2, if you were my friend, and you have to use your in-laws or aunt and uncle to watch the kids, I would tell you to stop doing all the extra stuff you do. Your ex is a parent to your kids too and needs to act like it. Ops response, thank you, I just don't want my kids negatively affected for sure, but I also don't want to be a doormat. Like, of course I'd rather pick them up if she can't get her kid in the car because they shouldn't have to be in latchkey when they have a som stepmom and a mom who works from home, but I think from now if he refuses to find them another ride and she won't do it, I'll still pick them up at least, but bring them to my house. Commenter 3, Op needs to talk with a lawyer about getting more custody of Louisa and Ted. Op's response, I don't have a lawyer, we did everything ourselves since it was so copacetic. Commenter 4, honestly, I would send an email with the spreadsheet, pretty bad jerk emo, and let them know that you don't appreciate their ungrateful attitude and that you are more than happy to go by the parenting agreement forward. People want to be petty and ungrateful and so do I lol. Op's response, I just feel like the best thing for my kids is to have a good co-parenting relationship. My friend's parents were divorced, and they did not get along and made her childhood miserable. It's not their fault we didn't work out and I want to do everything I can to make their lives not that much harder. But I agree I need to stop being so accommodating. It will be a horrible wake-up call, and I just don't want them to make my kids' lives worse. Commenter 5, NTA. Don't let anyone walk over you. They said you were dumping the kids on them when they were doing exactly the same. Ops response, I just hated the word dumping as if my kids aren't a delight to be around. I mean for their parents, I'm not one of those crazy moms or anything. I just can't imagine saying they were dumped on me. Commenter 6, does Ops children have their own rooms when at Greg's house, not sharing with their brother? Ops response, they have their own room at both houses. Commenter 7, how's the health insurance your kids have from Greg? Ops response, I already give him a huge break, to be honest. They're on his insurance so he pays the premiums, but since they have their son on it, the premiums stay the same if you have 1 or 7 kids. I could put them on my similar insurance, which would actually be a cheaper premium for me to pay, but I let the premiums he pays go towards his half of the medical expenses even though he'd have to pay it all anyways, if that makes sense. Lamau forget American healthcare, right? Luckily I use MySA to reimburse myself for the expenses. I can pull those reimbursements easily and make another spreadsheet. If any European or person from an actual first world country needs some to explain any of this, LMK lol. Update 1, 3 days later. Hey everyone, I don't know how to link on mobile, so my last post is in my profile. I got way too overwhelmed with the responses, but like I thought, I was completely being taken advantage of, and the friends telling me to let it go can suck it. JK, I know where they were coming from, they were just wrong, and my ex Greg and Tessie do need to be introduced to my good friend reality. One thing I didn't mention in my last post is that Greg and I have a long history. I've known him forever since we moved to his mom's neighborhood when I was 4, we were always friendly, and then we started hooking up when I was in college and got pregnant. In his defense, he 100% stood up, married me, took care of us, paid for everything while I finished school, and even paid for my college. But even before all that, he's always been a great guy and my friend. I know it seems like I was being taken advantage of, but of course over the years people probably thought I was taking advantage of him before I started making the big bucks. It was me who filed for divorce. He said he could probably go to therapy and find a way to make it work, but I knew I couldn't ask him to do that. And there has been reciprocity in other ways. After we divorced, he definitely helped me a lot in setting up my new home, before Luke and I got together. Doing things like mowing, cleaning the gutters, fixing appliances. Obviously those things don't happen anymore, but I'm just saying it hasn't always been me doing everything. Finally, all of this has not been thankless. Up until the manifesto, they were incredibly and vocally grateful and appreciative. Doing things for appreciative people is great and makes me feel good. Unfortunately, now that we are living in the post-manifesto era, I don't get any joy from helping them out like I used to. With all that being said, I can't continue bending over backwards for him just because he was good to me before. Anyways, I got pretty mad at myself at my last post and decided to respond to the manifesto. As I was hyping myself up though, Greg called. I was pretty amped, so I decided to answer. He started with apologizing. He didn't say it directly, but I got the gist that Tessie wrote the email in anger because of how overwhelming everything is. He reminded me that it wasn't just his son's issues. Louisa was also struggling to get her diabetes under control. Any other type 1 parents can probably relate, and she misread my email to think that I was asking for them to keep them for 3 of my custody periods for a total of 6 weeks. Going back to the manifesto, I can kind of see where she was saying that, but it wasn't the most coherent thing to begin with. He said 1 week for our honeymoon is totally fine and they will figure it out. He acknowledged that it was entirely inappropriate and uncalled for. Unluckily for him, I was not in the best mood and told him damn straight it was one of the most deranged and untrue emails I've ever read. I asked him if anything they wrote in the email rang true to him in the cold light of day, and he admitted no. I had kind of been going back and forth on this, and was originally going to tell him to go to hell and we would never switch custody times again. I didn't care if they had 5 more kids with C-sections, but I decided against going that far. I told him that I would get the kids when Tessie had her C-section, keep them through my custody, and would expect them to have them back during his next custody period, which still gave them 10 days to recover, etc. If he needed more help, I expected him to figure out any extra childcare for our kids like he will need to with his other son. He started arguing, but I just bulldozed through and told him that he could make this and all of the other times I've helped him out with childcare by watching the kids during my week during my honeymoon. He said that sounded fair and thanked me. But I told him that the email was so far out of line that any and all extras I've been doing were over immediately. He could either find a new carpool, no bus, private school, or I would keep picking the kids up from school, but he or Tessie could get them from my home during their weeks. If they are unable to care for the children due to their son's meltdowns or their new baby, I would be willing to help them, but warn them that due to their accusations I would start, LOL, tracking this, and if I thought it was becoming an issue I would file for primary custody. I asked him if that would help. He could have the kids every other weekend. I wouldn't demand child support in light of his very difficult situation, even though I know I could, and he insisted that wasn't necessary, that it was on them to figure things out. He really didn't have a lot to say back to any of this and apologized again. I told him that it wasn't impossible to rebuild the trust we have had in the past, but it was going to take a lot of time and hard work on his and his wife's part because I was done putting in so much just to get attacked. He promised he understood and he'd figure everything else out. I told him that since this was another verbal, aka not legally binding agreement, the first time either of them slips up, makes outrageous demands, or says anything remotely close to what she wrote in that email, I would bring down the hammer because due to the attacks on my character I now had a lawyer on retainer. Hadn't met with the lawyer yet, but sometimes you need to bluff. He confirmed he understood. Tessie sent me a text apology. It seems sincere, but I don't trust her. I know Greg wouldn't throw her under the bus, but the fact that she thought it was okay to send such a demeaning and demonizing email to me after all I've done for her really ruined any grace I was willing to give her. I sent her a short acknowledgement text, and went on with my day. Both their lives are about to get much, much more difficult. If they try to put any of that discomfort or difficulties on my kids, I will move swiftly, but also if it means that my kids get a little less at their dad's house than they do here, that's not the worst lesson for them. Their needs will always be met, I know that, and they've been in therapy for a while, so while I'm concerned that Tessie could take her frustrations out on them, I truly think they would tell me. I read so many other stories on here and realize that. 2 things. So the thing with the car, it's meant for my friend's stepdaughter for when she gets her permit. She is 15, and we all love her so much, but she has that disease that 15-year-olds get where she really doesn't have any motivation whatsoever. So I was talking about all this to said friend, she told her husband, and he marched upstairs and told his daughter to get dressed so she could go and take her permit test. She failed, but is going to try again next week, and he is purchasing the car next week. Greg knows and knows he has until then to acquire a new one. And the cat isn't Tessie's cat. It was Greg's guilty divorced dad first Christmas gift, lol. I really like the cat. She's very sweet and snuggly, and I haven't minded helping, especially since Louisa does feel bad she doesn't do it anymore. Honestly, if it wasn't for that I probably wouldn't have agreed to help. Luckily the induction is soon, and Greg won't be traveling for a while, so it's a moot point. Obviously if they were to decide to get pregnant again, they would need to hire someone to do the litter box going forward. I've probably only done it 3 times, but I see that was crossing some boundaries I should have put up. I'm going to keep enjoying the life that I've worked hard to build. I know they'll always be around and in my life, and it's unfortunate for them that the choices they made got them in this situation, but they're going to have to rebuild their village. I'm excited for the wedding and especially excited to go to Japan. Those things, and of course my kiddos, are my focus going forward. Peace. Relevant comments. Up on her relationship and co-parenting her kids with Greg. One thing we agreed on first before anything is we are never to badmouth the other parent in front of the kids. To our partners and friends? Sure, as long as little ears are far away. Even sometimes my kids will say disparaging things about Greg or Tessie, nothing concerning, just normal kid stuff, and kids hate rules. And we shut it down hard. Obviously if they were to bring up something serious we'd listen, and they are in therapy. It's more than saying their dad is a butthead for not letting them listen to the same record over and over and over again. If you're wondering, the record is Princess of Pop by Marina, and I have every note memorized at this point. Up on why Greg's mother won't help Tessie postpartum. She does not get along with Tessie and doesn't believe they need help after she has the baby. Commenter 1, awesome update, op. And how much trouble is it really for Greg to clean the darn litter box? It takes literally seconds. Pretty darn fair on all other things as well. Good for you. Whoop whoop. Op's response, I also want to offer to take the cat BC. I love her but Luke is allergic. We're getting the kids a dog around the holidays, not a Christmas puppy or anything, but they've met and exceeded our demands from them before they can ask for a dog, so we might be solemn saying no. It was only when he travels for work. Maybe a few days a month. I'm actually thinking as a sort of nice gesture to get them one of those robotic litter boxes. They're not crazy expensive. It would help Louisa, and it could be like a thank you for helping us with our honeymoon thing. I'm not saying I will, but Luke brought it up and I think it could be a little, yes, I'm pulling back any favors, but I still want my daughter and that cute jerk cat taken care of. Commenter 2, stop. Don't buy them anything. He's a parent and should parent his children without being paid with gifts. You are getting repaid the favors you have been doing for them. Your daughter needs to learn to deal with the cat box. It's not a hard task, but making it even easier is enabling. Just stop. You don't owe them anything. Op's response, my daughter has type 1 diabetes, which is an autoimmune disorder. We are working on stabilizing her sugars and blood work, but until that happens I am uncomfortable with her doing it. Update 2, 1 day later. So my ex and I had some recent issues, to say the least, and I'm completely pulling back any favors that I used to do. It's deserved on his and his wife's end, but it is going to hurt them. They have a little boy who's 3-4-ish, and it seems profoundly autistic. Still not speaking, has meltdowns, self-injures. In the past, since I live close, if their son was having a very severe meltdown and my kids were there, they'd ask me to come and get them, and I usually would. Unfortunately, they have behaved badly and I will no longer be doing this. They're also about to have another baby, which I'm sure will be stressful as well, so I understand it will be difficult. I obviously don't want my kids to have to deal with anything traumatic. The little boy is still their brother and they do love him. And I think it's important for them to have the time with their father and his family. That being said, I obviously want what's best for my kids. How do I help them remain positive while also protecting them? Up on if her ex cannot parent and take care of his children because of his son's meltdowns. We are 50-50 and they are 9 and 7. I agree it needs to be quality time. The issue is, he needs to take responsibility for the kids during his parenting time despite having more. He needs to stop relying on me because I will no longer be helping. I do worry that my kids will end up not wanting to go over if I make them stay during these meltdowns. It's just so complicated. Up on needing to teach her kids empathy and compassion with their father and brother. I'm sorry, I have been teaching them about empathy and that he's their brother, they do love him. But he is a lot and has meltdowns where he is very loud and injures himself. They really dislike being there around him as he's very volatile. And I can only care about my own kids. I'm sorry, I know I sound cold about all of this, but when you've been viciously attacked as a person and a mother for the horrible crime of wanting to go on a honeymoon, you lose any and all empathy for some people. Commenter 1, I think that your ex and his wife, and you can help with this as well, should help support all of the kids together by helping them to have empathy and compassion for their autistic sibling. Having them just leave is contributing to the stigma of autism, emo, unless the kids really want to leave and be with you. That said, I think the kids would have to deal with it. So yeah, I wouldn't think that it's appropriate to teach the kids to turn their back on a disabled sibling unless it becomes a safety issue, but since they're older, that doesn't seem likely at the moment. Op's response, in the past I have shown endless support and understanding to my ex and his wife about all of this. I would drop my own plans to go and get them, talk to them about how that's their brother and they can't just run away, etc. Unfortunately, my patience, support, and empathy is over due to the behavior of my ex and his wife. I understand they need a village, but they burned that bridge with their own actions. I think that if my kids ask me to come and get them in the future, I definitely will. But if my ex is just overwhelmed, I will tell him he needs to figure his home life out, or we can redo custody. Commenter 2, yeah, this has more to do with your ex being overwhelmed than your kids being in actual danger. They're older than your ex's child, probably more independent, and can easily avoid harm's way if the child is being aggressive and/or violent. Also, dad's job is to take care of all his kids. If he has to call you every time his son acts up, then he doesn't need to have 50-50 parenting time. This isn't to be petty, this is honest. If he can't manage the kids in his time, then maybe the schedule needs to change. Unless the kids are scared, in danger, or begging O to come get them, dad needs to deal. Also, what's to happen later on when he has another baby? Is he just gonna full-on neglect your kids? Be ready for anything and document every time you pick them up early. Op's response, I agree. Unfortunately for them, but because of their own actions, between the baby and losing me as support, their lives are about to be so much more difficult than they have been, but that's on them and for them to deal with. And sadly, I'm not the only person his new wife has done something to, which has led to his mom only helping them with the older kids and refusing to help his wife. Honestly, I don't blame her at all, and I'm glad my ex's mom will hopefully be able to be there when he says he needs help with my kids. It's just so horrible.